Yeah. Uh. Yeah.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm super excited for tonight. I have a legend in the hobby and the community, Mr. Brian Gundy, with me. Like I said, super excited to pick his brain, ask him questions. So we're gonna give a shout out to some people that are in the chat, or at least were. Hopefully, some people start trickling in. So Kevin, I hope you get service. Thanks for looking forward to it. Eric, welcome. Aaron, that's good. All right. So I generally start these shows off introducing people in the chat, but we started pretty much right on time, which is unheard of for me. But I wanted to make sure, and for me, I got in the most of this 1 hour as humanly possible.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I wanted to make sure I started promptly. So can you just give us a brief introduction about yourself and some of the history that you have keeping reptiles? Just
sure.
Something brief.
Yeah, growing up, I had just about every type of animal you can think of. I've had mice, rats, hamsters, guinea pigs, rabbits, ferrets, fish. You name it, I pretty much had it as a pet. And then when I graduated from high school, I started working at an animal hospital. And lucky for me, I worked with a veterinarian that specialized in exotic animals. So not only did I get to work with dogs and cats at the animal hospital, but I also got to work with animals such as mountain lions, cheetahs, African lions, wolves, chimpanzees, anteaters, lots and lots of reptiles, lots of birds of prey. And then about 30 years ago, I started the business called For Goodness Snakes. And at that time, I was breeding and selling colubrids. And I did that for about 10 or 12 years and was actually in the process of selling out that collection when I saw a photograph of a pied ball python. And and until that time, I had never seen anything that looked like a pied. And I made a decision at that moment. It was not indecisive. It was right now. I made the decision to take the money that I had gained from selling out my colubrid collection and then just reinvest it into ball pythons. And at that time, pieds were selling for about $25,000. So I couldn't necessarily purchase a pied. So I ended up buying 2 male het pieds for $1,000 a piece. And that's basically what started my whole collection from there. Was producing possible het pieds and then taking all of those and breeding and raising them up and then producing from them to figure out or to prove their genetics.
Right. So I'm assuming that you eventually hit a pied out of that.
Oh yeah, sure. And I eventually purchased a pied, 3 or 5 years later. My first pied was cost me $4,700. So I've always been a kind of a slow grower type of a project kind of guy. And so I've, yeah, that's pretty much the history of where I've come from.
Yeah, I mean, and you've been doing it for longer than I've been alive.
150 years. Just who's counting, right?
Right. So pretty much the first part of this, we're just going to be talking about ball pythons and some advice for first-time breeders or people that want to get into the hobby.
Right.
So with that being said, do you have any advice for somebody that is in their first year of breeding? Any tips, tricks? Be patient, that type of thing.
Sure. I think, probably the most important part for me as a mature reptile breeder in this community is to really share as much information as I can so that people that are just now starting off don't have to spin their wheels, get frustrated, get anxious. And I remember how it was when I first started off and how frustrated it was to try to get information. So I've always been very open with whatever I can share. But as far as new breeders or even new reptile owners, I think probably one of the most important things, especially with ball pythons, is that the ambient temperature needs to be stable and consistent, between 80 and 82 degrees, somewhere around there. I get phone calls almost every day from all over the country because I put my name and number out there just for people to call when they're having issues. And it's amazing how many people, especially brand new um, reptile keepers, that really are not getting very good information out there from the Petcos, PetSmarts um, in the world, because they don't seem to be considering ambient temperature as a part of the equation, and that's where the respiratory infection starts to come into play. So yeah, that's one suggestion I have is, definitely keep the ambient temperature up always as far as a husbandry goes. Um, a lot of people think that humidity is a big deal. If any of you guys have seen my videos, you know that I'm not a big humidity guy. I get healthy sheds almost every single shed, but I'm from the old school, and I like to keep my animals on very, very, very dry substrate. The drier, the better. And so um, I've learned from an animal keeper throughout my life that if I can keep my animals in a dry or as dry as possible environment, then the microorganisms like bacteria, protozoa, fungus, you start to name all the bad things. They need two things to survive: heat and humidity. And being that our ball pythons are hot and damp in some people's um, collections, then that concerns me. But I know people that keep their animals in very dry, or excuse me, very wet uh, situations, and they seem to be healthy too. But that, to me, it's a lot of it has to do with the temperature, not necessarily the humidity, but the temperature would definitely override the important factor for me in the equation. It's always temperature. 80 to 90 degrees is the sweet spot. Anything higher is not necessary. Anything lower is potentially dangerous.
Right, right, and that's generally what I've heard as far as the temperature range.
Yeah,
About 90 on the hot spot
yeah.
at the most. 85 to 88 ambient throughout the enclosure.
Yeah,
and we've seen that with incubation, everybody's around 89.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere around there.
And I don't know if you guys have seen Dave Kaufman's video when he was in Africa. He's down there with his temp gun right in the hole where he just caught a ball python. And what better information can you get than that? That the humidity, obviously, during shedding and during incubation is super important. Especially incubation. I lean toward keeping a more dry environment for my animals 24/7.
Right. And a lot, of how you keep depends on where you're at, as far as geography.
Well, one might consider that, but when you start getting into microclimates, you really need to consider the word microclimate. So unless I live in the Bay Area. We have a San Francisco Bay Area. We have a huge amount of microclimates. If you go over to the beach about 20 miles away, it's usually about 30 to sometimes 40 degrees difference in temperature, ambient temperature. But yeah, I just think that the animals need to be a little dry.
Yeah.
But the microclimate thing, just think of this, Ken, is that your microclimate is really the climate in your snake's cage. It's like I said, we all live in different parts of the country or in different parts of the world, but we really need to focus on that really microclimate in your snake's environment. Uh, Barometric pressures based on where you live is going to have some bearing on the snake's, you know, day-to-day living type stuff. But yeah, I think if you live wherever you live, you can create any type of environment you want for that snake, you know, in
Right.
its own
Like for
cadence.
me, the for some reason in my apartment, I have a pretty high relative humidity. I
Mhm,
think it's like at least 75%.
mhm.
It's humid enough that I don't have to season my cigar humidor.
Right.
So I find myself barely misting the cocoa unless there's a stuck shed or there's something
Sure.
where I have to take uh, I have to make sure that I up the humidity.
Yeah.
So
And
I
you
just
know, don't get me wrong. When my snakes, when I know that I have a snake that's in shed, I'll literally dump the water bowl and I'll take a spray water
mm,
bottle and I'll create that snake's cage into a torrential storm, so that that snake's environment for that moment
is
is at 100 or nice close to 100%.
mm,
But then as soon as it sheds, everything goes right back to the newspaper, and you know. But again, it's one thing that everybody needs to remember is that you're going to find a lot of people that you talk to do a lot of things differently, and that's okay as long as it works. So as long as it works. And I have a story where I used to a friend of mine. He's passed away since then, but his name was Bob Applegate, and he's a very world-renowned colubrid breeder. And he had written quite a few books and things. And he and I were in a conversation one time, and we were just kind of swapping tales, and he was telling me about his technique for incubating his colubrid eggs. And at the end of the conversation, I said to him, I said, "Well, isn't that a little unorthodox? You know, the way you do that?" And he said, he looks at me and he goes, "Well, it might be, but it works." And it was like a aha moment. It was the one moment that really made sense to me. You know, and there haven't been too many of those in my lifetime, but all that it really came down to, it doesn't really matter how you do this as long as it works, because you're going to find people doing things differently. You know, we do live in different parts of the country. We are mentored by, you know, from different people with different prejudices or whatever on what they've
right.
always done. And so, but yeah, the key is that it works, you know, um, that your eggs hatch and that your snakes shed and that they eat, and, you know, the whole base, all the bases are covered.
All right. So you mentioned you know a mentor. Is that something that you recommend that somebody find locally, or do you think in this day and age, with the community, that you can find what you need either through the internet or through the interaction between some of these groups that we're in on Instagram or
Sure. Yeah.
like
And
that?
I think a mentor in just about any type of something that you're passionate about is only going to accelerate your ability to get better and better, and with hopes of not having to go through to the college of your own college of hard knocks, but that you're able to lean on the college of hard knocks that your mentor has gone through, and that is priceless. So yeah, um, you know, get on Instagram. You know, I was talking to someone the other day, and I probably have 15 or 20 friends on the internet that I may or not meet ever, you
Mhm.
know. And so because of the internet, I think it's a great opportunity for us to mentor to people and to get mentored from people, you know. And Instagram is one of those perfect examples of that. And I'm on Instagram every day. So if you guys ever have any questions, um, bring it on. Yeah. If I can't answer it, I'll find someone that can.
And that's what's great. That's how this got set up. Out of the blue, I asked Mr. Gundy if he'd be willing to come on. He agreed, and I was, I kind of like did a little happy when he said yes, because it's really exciting because we're on completely different coasts here, and
Yeah.
likelihood of us actually meeting in person is pretty slim unless
Yeah, unless I
I'm
come out
flying
there,
out or
like Tinley or something like
right
that.
one of those
Yeah.
bigger shows.
Yeah, right.
So this
Yeah.
is for me. This is really, really, really exciting.
And it is for me too. I just love this. I mean, you think about it, you guys. We all are passionate about reptiles, and I get to do this for a living. I get to do this 24/7, 365. I am on cloud nine on a day-to-day basis because I'm living my dream. And in a half an hour from now, I'll be educating a group of kids here at this house that have most likely never touched and handled snakes before. And by the end of the hour, I will have taught them that snakes are just like puppies. And at the end of the program, we will have people running around, as you guys have probably seen from my videos, with snakes wrapped around them and calm and just relaxed and having a blast. And it isn't that way when I begin. It's a big process to get people to realize that our animals are just gentle. Fear is a big issue as long as the animals, and it goes for animals in general, really, but as long as they're not afraid, then animals in general are pretty gentle. It's all about fear or the lack of it.
Right. For me, it's being able to. Is this a fear response or a food response? And if I don't see that, well, we're gonna pick you up.
Yeah, we're gonna pick you up. I tell people every day almost that when I'm out herping and I'm catching wild snakes, if I see a snake in the wild and doesn't have a set of buttons on it, I'm going for it. It's going to be picked up, and most likely it's not going to even bite me. It's very rare for me to even ever get bit by even wild snakes when I'm catching them from the wild, and mainly because I'm not grabbing them by their heads.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a matter of being gentle with them.
Yeah. I from some videos that I've seen, you have people just coming down from above, grabbing that wild snake, and it's like, no.
Yeah.
There's been snakes that I've missed because I was trying to be, gentle with the animal to pick it up in a safe manner rather than just grab it and have it freak out.
Sure.
Well,
when I was a kid, when we used to go herping all the time. I mean, every day when I was a kid, and what the first thing we did when we grabbed a snake was to grab it by its head, and that meant that the snake can't bite you. And it took me years and years to realize that if I didn't grab them by their heads, they really didn't have any interest in biting me. So
right.
Yeah.
I remember in Dave Kaufman's video, he's picking up ball pythons from the wild, and they look like.
I've been with Dave when he's picked up Northern Pacific rattlesnakes by hand too. So he knows his stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean that movie was incredible. I recommend anybody watch that. I'm sure the people in this chat have already done that. So while we're still on the ball python topics, before we get into the educational pieces, what are you currently working with in your collection?
Mainly pieds and clowns, but I also have Orange Dream, GHI, Ultramel, Leopard, Special, Enchi, Yellow Belly. But the focus throughout my whole collection is really pieds and clowns. And eventually everything in my collection will be layered into pieds and clowns. Oh, and I didn't mention Gold Blush.
Right.
So
so now that you mentioned it, do you want to talk about that line more in depth?
Sure. So the gold blush trait is an animal that I pulled out of my collection about 12 years ago or so. It was a normal looking snake, but an amazing normal looking snake. And this was way before yellow bellies. This was before specials. This was before we actually knew that a normal looking ball python could actually be a morph, could actually be a genetic trait. So I thought, as I was producing these normals that were looking so amazing, and I was selling them for huge prices back in the day. Um, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I could reproduce this look. And it took me a long time to even recognize, because it looks like a normal. So, and again, this was way back before specials and yellow bellies and any of that stuff were around. And so anyway, through the course of time, I've just tweaked it in. I've now proven that it is at least a dominant gene trait. I don't think I've produced a super, but I may have. If I did, I sold it a few years ago. But yeah, it's a great project. It works as an enhancement, like a fire or like a special. Yeah, it's a great project. I love it, and it's very rare. It's all throughout my whole collection, but very rare in other people's collections. There's only a few people in the whole country that I can think of that are actually working with gold blush.
Right. It's not something I really see, on Morph Market.
Oh, that's there.
As far as being local to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's on. There are quite several gold blush animals on Morph Market. I don't have any on there. I don't sell on Morph Market.
Right. And the links to all of Mr. Gundy's social media and his website are in the description below. So be sure to check that out. I have his website, his Instagram, and his YouTube page. I don't know what the most recent YouTube video that was posted, but there's some from quite a while ago that are very
important. I stopped YouTube videos just about at COVID, and then I just switched over to Instagram, and I'm on Instagram almost daily. Mm-hmm. And whether I'm putting videos up of me herping or I'm just still shots of different projects I'm working on. But if you want to see any of my social media input, it's on Instagram, the most recent.
Okay, so that's the best place to find you right now.
Right,
and then you have your website also.
Yes,
in the description, and there you can.
But
check out inventory and
but with saying that, I do have over 750 videos on YouTube. I'm just not active on it anymore. Mm-hmm. But there are some amazing videos that I had on YouTube. If you guys ever get the chance, check out my video on the raccoons, the bobcats, and the skunks. Those are some of my favorites. Go ahead, Ken.
Why? Randy's asking why I'm so small. Because I want the focus of this to be on Mr. Gundy. I'm just sitting here listening and being hidden behind the comments. All right. So moving on. What's your favorite ball python that you've ever produced? Was it a clown pied or something with that gold blush trait in it?
I would have to say that anything pied is going to be at the top of my list, whether it's the pied clown, whether it's, anything pied. And that is just continuing. I would say probably 70% of my collection is either pied or head pied. And that's exactly the direction where I want to go.
Okay, that sounds good. So, where do you see the future of the reptile hobby and ball pythons going? Trending in a positive direction, or is there?
Yeah, I've met
hands.
Yeah, I've never thought of anything but positive. I've never experienced anything but positive in the ball python community, or the projects, the passion that we all have. Um, where these projects are going is only up. I mean, if you guys have been watching Miguel's videos recently, that guy has been producing some amazing clutches. And if Miguel can do it, the rest of us can do it. And it's people like Miguel that really are really helping to grow this, not only the community, but from the business standpoint. Not everybody does this to make money. And I totally get that. But from day one, that's always been my goal, is to create a business from my hobby where I can pay my bills doing what I love to do. And yeah, it's like I said, I'm living my dream. And you guys, everybody's going to start off in different times. Patience is probably the most critical. I mean, just think about it. We have to wait 60 days for these eggs to hatch. And if you've been in this long enough, you've waited 60 days, 20 or 30, or some of you even 40 times. So yeah, this is not a short-term hobby. Like I said, I've been into snakes since I was about 5 years old. I started breeding when I was in my 30s or 40s, and even probably younger than that, just goofing around. But be patient. Patience is the key to it all. And getting back to Miguel, the name of his business has always been, I've always been so impressed with it. For 30 years, I was a manufacturing manager at a high-tech metallurgical company. I worked in aerospace and that type of thing. And we always had this process that we called the continuous improvement process, or always evolving. And so when I heard the name of his business, it just hit home with me, and I thought, well, if we as hobbyists can look at this hobby and continue to look for things that will enhance how we do things, make our animals healthier, and allow our what we learn to be to change. If evolution isn't the key to your hobby, then you're probably in the wrong hobby. And this is not an easy hobby, guys. If you want to be a breeder and if you want to make a living doing this, you better pass the test of being an overachiever, because my guess would be that Kevin is an overachiever, Justin is an overachiever, Miguel is an overachiever, and the list goes on and on. This is not easy. But while I'm out there cleaning rat cages on a week-to-week basis, I'm still having a blast. I'm raising animals that are reproducing, and I get to see how many rats are produced. And sometimes I wonder, well, if I feed this little rat a little bit more, will it have more babies? Stuff like that. So yeah, it's just so much fun, but it takes patience. Give yourself time. It's one nice thing about this hobby is that we do sort of have an annual. Most of us, probably, unless you are working with, what's the word I want to use? The machine that does the ultrasound. Unless you're working at an ultrasound machine, you're probably doing this like most of us, where your snakes will start to lay eggs in there in maybe February, March, April, May, June, somewhere around there, for about 3 or 4 months. But some people are getting their snakes to breed almost all year round. But yeah, patience is a huge part of it. And just have fun. Don't worry about your mistakes. They're going to happen. Just learn from them. look at mistakes as more of opportunity than anything else. It's just an opportunity for you to um, document, if you will, and learn from the mistake. And I tell you, I've made more mistakes than anybody
Mhm.
I've ever met. No, nobody even has. I don't even know who would be in second place, but it's not even close. Yeah,
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest takeaways is patience.
yeah,
It's not like with rodents where I can get you know a couple weans and then a few months later now they're
yeah,
adults and they're breeding and it's a
right.
couple
Yeah,
you know
it's
couple years for ball pythons to come into
mhm,
maturity, and then,
mhm,
like you said, you're waiting
mhm.
60 days once you have eggs, somewhere around
And
there.
then, yeah, excuse me. And then when you start, working with, excuse me, breeding double hets and triple hets together, well, then that's going to elongate the waiting time even more,
Mhm.
because of the odds.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited. Like I said earlier, when we were backstage, I want to keep things small. I don't want to get overwhelmed, so I'm only
Hmm.
looking to, maybe produce, 6 to 7 clutches per season, and
Hmm.
be selectively breeding what I have in my racks.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I just have over 100 snakes right now,
mhm.
and I have room for about 300. I've had as many as 300, but right now I'm just kind of slowly just focusing on the quality. Quality is everything with me, and every year the level of quality just increases. So I'm, you know, I'm constantly uh, letting animals go that made the grade 2 years ago, but don't necessarily make the grade now.
Right, and I think that's going to be my mindset. So, if I made hets from you this year, maybe I'll use you to make different hets next year. But then the
Mhm.
following year, when some of those hets may have, I've grown up, and I can breed to try to get a visual, then the you
Mhm.
know codom
Right.
like will
And
justify that get sold.
when you guys are picking your base single gene morphs, uh, find the most beautiful pastel you can find. Find the most beautiful um, any of the base morphs that you can find. And there are ugly ones out there. I have people um, texting me and wanting me to identify babies that they've just hatched out. That happens all the time. And the
Mhm.
sad part about it is sometimes I'll get somebody will text me a set of photographs and I can't even identify whether it's a normal or an enchi. And that's not a good thing, you know. And I don't say anything,
Mhm.
but it's very frustrating for me to know that um, somebody out there is just going to continue to propagate animals that really aren't that high quality. And I don't blame the person because it's all subjective.
Right.
It's not a right or wrong thing. Um, but there are some, like when I was into colubrid breeders have a totally different mindset than ball python breeders because we're dealing with a whole different, king snakes, milk snakes, corn snakes, you name the whole gamut.
Mhm.
So quality with those projects is totally different than with um, ball pythons. But the one project that blows away everything in the ball python is the desert ghost.
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the hottest, if not the hottest,
I mean,
is right
we
now.
have the desert ghost, and then everything else is down here. It's just amazing. I have a het desert ghost one in my collection, but yeah, I'm super impressed with that gene trait.
I was actually hoping that my buddy would have one here. Unfortunately, it hasn't been shipped yet. It's a lemon blast desert ghost.
Hmm.
So hopefully in the next few years he'll get worked in, to and just everything we can work him into, just to get
Right.
desert ghost in there.
Okay, here's another idea or perspective for new breeders and breeding. If you're going to be a breeder, spend as much money for the snakes as your budget will allow. Yeah, you can buy females this year and 2 years later buy males if you want. That works out great. But when you spend your money for a ball python, spend as much money as your budget will allow, because for a couple reasons. It's gonna, if you're, especially if you're buying babies, it's gonna take you 2 to 3 years on an average to produce or reproduce from that baby. By that time, most projects, especially dominant, codominants, are going to be dropping in price exponentially on a year-to-year basis. And yeah, you're going to always purchase the most expensive snakes you can afford, because if you do, you're going to have a outcome like Miguel. If you don't, you're going to be on the other end of the spectrum. It's just, where do you want to be in the spectrum? Miguel, and to me, and I've never even met Miguel. We have communicated on Instagram, but yeah, I have the highest. Yeah, he's a great guy and an amazing business guy and a snake breeder, and but yeah, purchase high.
Yeah.
And
right. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, if you have, let's say you have $2,000, you can buy one amazing animal that, a visual recessive loaded with codoms, or you could buy a lot of, individuals with some codoms.
Yeah, and I've gone the whole gamut. There was one time years and years ago that I had 48 female normals in my collection, adults.
Wow.
And that was the Kickstarter for everything. But that's where I started, was 48 normal females. Because I could go to Craigslist and buy them for $20 a piece. And there were some of those that I was getting it back in the day that were, 5 feet long and 5,000 grams. But can't do that anymore. But yeah, buy the most expensive animals you can afford. Don't overdo it. Don't put yourself in a financial bind. Nothing's worth that. But get as close to that bind as possible, and you'll start to produce some animals that you can be very proud of. And buy the animals you want in your collection. I walk out into my snake room 10 times a day, and there are certain snakes that it's the first thing I go to, is that my number one pie clown female. I'm just looking, I'm looking for cages to clean is what it comes down to. Think of it in a way, when you guys are cleaning cages, is the cleaner you can keep your water, the cleaner you can keep your cages, the longer that snake's going to be around. And the longer you can keep your temperatures between 80 and 90 degrees, you're going to minimize the vet visits. And if you're a person like me, if you have 100 snakes, you guys are already knowing that if you have 2 or 3 snakes a year that are going to the vet, it's probably costing you $1,000 to $1,500 to $2,000 a year just for vet bills. That's a waste of my money. That's not going to happen.
Right. And for me,
and I was a vet tech for 9 years, so I bring into this hobby 9 years of working with exotic animals. So there's a lot of things that I can do with my own animals when they do get sick that I've learned through the years, and working closely with other vets that are exotic vets. But and you guys, again, if you ever have any questions, and Kent's going to give you guys all the information down here, just give me a call. I'm super easy to talk to, and I will help you. Yeah, you have my commitment to that.
And that's an awesome resource to have.
I hope so.
Just a phone call away. If you run into an issue, that's awesome. I don't know many people. I know a lot of us have our phone numbers out there on like a Morph Market or something like that, but not many people readily give them.
And, you know, and it's
Everybody.
funny because when I answer my phone, a lot of times the first thing the person says on the other side is, "Oh, wow, you even answer your own phone," or something like that, you know. And yeah, either we as breeders need to be a little bit better user friendly to our customers and those that don't know as much. I'm sure I'm not the only one that is very open to helping people. I know I'm not, because I'm on, you know, I see what's going on out there. But yeah, there's a lot of people that'll help you. Yeah. And you know who they are. We all know who they are.
All right. So you mentioned earlier in the chat that you were actually at a house about getting ready to do a birthday party. You know, in
Yeah.
the next 20 minutes. So
yeah, this lady called me the other day, and she said to me that she was trying to confirm today's party, and I said, "Whoa, time out! I'm looking at my calendar right now, and I have this podcast with you guys, and I'm sorry I can't break it." And then I went on back on my notes on the email correspondence, and anyway, there was a little bit of miscommunication, and so I just thought, well, gosh, if I have to be at your house an hour later, then why don't I, if you guys don't mind, can I just go ahead and borrow your computer for this podcast? And then right when we're done, I'm at somebody, I've never been here before. I'm 30 miles away from my house. I don't even know these people. And then I'm going to go do a reptile presentation for their daughter who was having a birthday party. And yeah, if you guys want, check out the video. I'll put the video on Instagram out just after I do this show.
That's amazing. So to seg into this topic, what prompted you to start doing these educational programs, these birthday parties?
That's a great story. So my kids, who are now in their early 30s, were in elementary school, and I was doing cluebirds then. I didn't have any maybe one ball python. And I was asked by their science teacher to come into their school and take a day off work and come in and do an educational presentation for the whole school. One class after the other, you know, 6 classes, but the whole day. So yeah, I'd be glad to. And anytime, I mean, I remember in kindergarten, okay, or even before kindergarten, when we had summer camps down at the elementary school down at the end of the street, I would bring snakes and do show and tell with snakes. So that's all I do. I just do show and tell. And so anyway, the science teacher asked me to do this program. I did it. A couple weeks after that, a parent called me and had reminded me that I had done this program, and asked if I could do a birthday party for her son Billy or whatever. And I said, yeah, I'd be glad to, and give me the date and address, and I'll be there, you know, a few minutes early. And the lady says, well, how much do you charge? And I go, well, I don't really charge anything. I'd be glad to do it for nothing, you know. And she says, no, I insist. I want to pay you. And I said, okay, well, how about $100? I thought, okay, $100, that'd be, you know, I could do $100 for an hour-long program. And so anyway, I did it. It went great. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a fish out of water, and, you know, just brought some snakes and lizards and showed these kids. And then a couple weeks later, I got another phone call from another mother, and she heard that Janet, the mother of Billy, hired me to do their, you know, party. So she was wondering if I could, you know, do a party for her. So I started doing parties, and it would probably, for about 8 years or so, I would probably do 4 to 10 a month, maybe on an average of 6. So it put some extra cash in my pocket. It was great. I had a great time. And then after working 30 years at the same company, I got laid off. I was in upper management. I thought I was going to be there for life, Bo. Yeah, I had it. They had a different idea. So anyway, I got laid off, and I was pretty upset for a first couple of days. Didn't scared to death, not knowing what to do. And then I thought, I wonder if I could turn this hobby and this little business that I have into something that would actually pay my bills. And just to make a long story short, I'm probably averaging about 36 to probably about 36 programs a month
Wow.
now. Yeah, so we're probably gonna do over 300 this year.
That's
And
incredible.
sometimes I'm doing 3 to 5 a day. And it's just one program after the other. And the snakes and the lizards show me, and I've been around for a while, show me no stress, no issues at all. Over 50,000 children now have handled my animals, not just touched. We're talking, you guys seen my videos, we're going all out. We're changing people's lives. And over 50,000 children now have handled my animals. We have never, ever had a single issue.
Wow.
Ever. And I let them all go. And it's just chaotic. It's just crazy. As long as I've had that hour with the audience, so I can coach them and prepare them emotionally for what they're about to experience. And that's really what I do, is I emotionally prepare them to become unbrainwashed, because that's really what I think it is. Most people have been brainwashed to think that snakes are dangerous and aggressive. And I think they're just the opposite. I think of them as puppies. So, when I do my programs, I'm kissing my snakes. I'm getting really close to them. It's a lot of hugging. There's a lot of puppy stuff going on. And that's how I get almost everybody. Not always, but if I do my job right, I'm going to totally turn people from being afraid to being intrigued and enjoying the experience. And that's what I love about it.
And so you're talking about coaching the people that you're interacting with. How do you prepare your animals? Just through your normal everyday husbandry and care?
Yeah, there's no preparation for the animals. I do know if I have a good I have an ability to read the animals. Okay, being that I'm an animal guy and I've been an animal guy all of my life, there's just something inherent in people that do this where we can read animals. I know whether it's a horse, whether it's a dog, whether it's a dove or a pigeon, I can tell whether an animal is at calm or not. And it really comes down to, some of these animals are so calm, even when they first hatch out of the eggs, which is really the time when you would expect just the opposite. Because remember, when these animals are hatching, just like all baby animals, they're engineered to survive. And that means if they have to bite their way out of a situation, they're going to do it. And that's what they'll do. And I tell my audiences all the time, I've been bit by sparrows, even a sparrow. I've caught sparrows when I was a kid. I used to catch them, and bring them home and try to feed them and raise them and let them go. And sparrows will bite. Anything that's afraid will do whatever it can to protect itself. So as long as the animals are not afraid, and in just a few minutes, I'm going to take 2 lizards and 5 snakes and let them go onto a table, and I will know that the animals are not afraid. And that's why it works. Because if they were afraid, either they'd be trying to get away or they would try to protect themselves. Fight or flight. It's really what it comes down to.
Right. Now, you said you have a handful of lizards with you and a handful of snakes. What species are you working with here?
So I have a blue tongue skink. I have a black and white tegu. I have I bring 4 ball pythons of various color morphs, pieds, maybe, a banana, something that's going to be flashy, firefly or something like that. Excuse me. If I had a desert ghost, I might bring it. And then I bring a baby, 2-year-old, about an 8-foot albino green Burmese python. And it's always the tegu and the berm that get the love and the attention. I also bring a blue-eyed Lucy. I also bring a pied, always a pied. I never go anywhere. Never. Yeah, it's if I go anywhere, if I bring one snake. In fact, there used to be time years ago where I would go do cold calls, where I would walk into a school unannounced, uninvited, and I would have a duffel bag with me, and I would introduce myself, and I'd start passing out flyers, and I would ask the person behind the counter, the school secretary, whatever, if she wouldn't mind if I would bring one of my friends out, and before you know it, it depends on the person's reaction. Most people would give me a negative reaction. I've heard the word no. I mean, can you imagine walking into a school and most people, I don't know what the issue is. I think they say 4% of the population like reptiles or something like that. But yeah, I've been kicked out of many school offices and not being, being yelled at to leave. It's been fun.
Don't mind me with this big lizard that I got duffel bag.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you said that the Burmese python and the tegu are the most popular ones. Is that just mainly because of the size?
I think so. When I bring out the tegu, so when I set up my setup, I have an acrylic pillar with 5 slots in it. I have a pied, a banana, a Lucy, who knows what else, and at the bottom is the blue-tongued skink. So I have 5 animals on display, and then I also have 2 animals, the berm and the tegu, that are hidden and are not on display. So during the course of my program, I'm getting the people used to the snakes, and we do some audience participation where I have some people that are, we're going to put the birthday child becomes my personal assistant, and we start to layer these kids with snakes on them and stuff. And then closer to the end, I start to get the parents involved, and I actually blindfold them. And and before I blindfold them, I have them promise everyone at the party that they will not remove that blindfold, no matter what they hear. Okay, because it's all about now the audience's reaction. Because at this point in time, they don't see a tegu, they don't see a berm. I have about a 40-gallon ice chest on wheels. That's what I pull my berm around in. But anyway, and then I blindfold one of the parents, and then I bring out the tegu, and and the audience is going crazy, and then I have the tegu just slapping that tongue up against the parent's face, and they have no idea what's going on. The audience is going crazy, and then I'll have the person, and then I will go over to the other side and make sure we have that tegu kissing that the cheek of the other side, and then we'll have the mom or dad, whichever I decide, to remove that blindfold, and then they just go crazy because now there's a tegu sitting in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
And then I do the same thing with the other parent, and I'll have them blindfold themselves, have them promise to the audience that they will not remove that blindfold no matter what they hear. And then I bring out this 8-foot albino Burmese python and just drape it over the parents' shoulders. And then after that, I go through a little bit more education on what not to do about touching their heads and staring into their faces. And we make sure there's no screaming because screaming scares me. So I don't want any screaming at all. I just want everybody to be calm, relaxed, and having a good time. And so that's really what I try to convey. And by the end of that program, we are there. And that's when we can start letting the animals go. And the kids have already been acclimated because they've already been seeing me kissing the animals. And yeah, so it's a 45-minute segue into the release. And that's when it really gets crazy. And everybody has a blast. It's just amazing.
All right, so I know we're getting close to 7:30, which is I'm pretty sure I could talk about this all night. But
yeah, I have the gift of gab. My wife says I do.
but
So
I don't want to take away from the young lady's birthday party that you are at. So we're gonna go ahead and start to wrap this up. So you do educational events.
yes.
How does one go about booking them, and what is the geographical range that you're willing to travel?
Sure.
To?
So I live basically in San Jose, California, which is about 50 miles south of San Francisco. I charge about $450 per program. It's an hour-long program. And if any of you are considering doing what I do for a living, take my number, give me a call, and I can make it happen for you. I can help you become what I do. And I've done it. And some of you may be listening right now. But yeah, if you have any comments or any questions on how to get going with this. So what I do is I just take the phone call. I just make sure I get all the information. Because I was a manager for 30 years, I don't have to be reminded. I don't have to be told. I have been groomed, in a sense, all of my life for this right now. This is yeah. And so just make sure you're as ethical as you can possibly be, even beyond. There is nothing more important to a business than ethics.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, there's nothing more important. So keep all that in mind.
All right, Mr. Gundy, are there any final words that you'd like to share with the audience before I let you go to finish out your evening with this amazing educational experience?
Yeah, I wrote something down I wanted to share with you guys. Let me see if don't aspire to make a living. And this is a quote I heard years ago. Don't aspire to make a living. Aspire to make a difference. Think about it.
That's a really, really good quote.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
My favorite. So that's what I have for you guys.
All right. All right. Well, it has been a pleasure to be able to pick your brain and listen to you for
You're welcome, Ken.
Thank you so much for coming on. Everybody in the chat at 8 o'clock, please head over to Jeremy Warfel's channel. He's interviewing Angie and Jeff from Celtic Falls. Be sure to check me out next week when I actually have Jeremy Warfel on the show. But that one will be at 6 since he has a show at 8. All right. So thanks everybody in the chat for joining. Mr. Gundy, thank you again for agreeing to come on here, and we will see you all next week.
Have a blast. Love y'all.